Hey everybody. Tonight we're going to be talking about a story time when I worked for a temp agency as a brand new medical coder. That's the topic for today. I hope you all had a great Wednesday. It is December 1st. We are in the last month of 2021. Ooh! Hi Tangela, thank you for joining me. Can't believe how fast this year has gone and everything that happened this year. Do you ever do that? Do you ever look back at the year and think, wow, that was me this year? Quite a few things to be thankful for. And the one thing if I could go back in this year and not have was that freaking winter storm that we had in February. That I could have done without. I'm just saying. All right, so it looks like it's going to be a very small crowd tonight. But we're going to go ahead and get started anyway. If you are brand new to my channel, welcome. I am Blue. I'm a medical coder. Tonight I am doing a story time. I am talking about my experience working for a temp agency as a brand new medical coder. Now, I recommend this a lot to a lot of brand new coders, and a lot of brand new coders don't want to try this. They refuse. They say, well, Blue, I really want a regular job. I want a job that is full-time and, I'm hired on. That would be great if we had that. But unfortunately, that is not the reality in medical coding. It is very difficult for brand new medical coders to start because a lot of places want 3 to 5 years experience, a year of experience. Nobody wants to train new people, but what they have to remember is a lot of times they're still training even veteran coders, right? Not everybody knows everything. So that is something that I wish would change about the culture of health information, period. But until then, my recommendation, if you are having a hard time finding a job, is to go and apply with a temp agency that specializes in medical professions. So how do you find this? So you look in Google. You can Google temporary agencies for medical professions in your area, and there should be a huge list to pop up. I did this in a major city, and a lot of the agencies popped up. And so they will have different positions. Some they will have for medical coders, some they will have for medical billers, some they will have for prior authorizations. It really all depends on what the temp agency has to offer. Now, the other thing that I will say about the added benefit of applying with a temp agency and getting yourself registered to work with them is it's their job to find you a job. And it doesn't matter what it is, as far as if you're telling them you want something in the medical profession, as far as administrative side, medical coding preferred, you can do medical billing, you can do release of information, that kind of thing, because you have HIPAA training. Those are the things that you can add on to your resume, and that experience that you're adding on, whether it is 1 day or a week or 3 months, is a heck of a lot better than having no experience and just spinning your wheels and getting frustrated about not being able to find a job with no experience. So that is just my advice there. Now, my story, this is my own personal story, because I always have somebody come back at me, well, Blue, okay, this is my personal story, and I am sharing it with all of you so that way you know my experience. When I finally decided to go to the temp agency, because like I said, I didn't want to go either, because I was under the idea that I was going to be able to get a job right away, and I didn't. I fell into that like everybody else, because they don't tell you this going in. And so when I went to the temp agency, I registered with them. I went and filled out all their paperwork to get myself registered for work. Is basically you tell them when you are available, and you can tell them if you want full-time work or part-time work, what are your hours that you prefer, or are you flexible? Will you be willing to accept any assignment that you get put on? And the agency that I worked for was a wonderful woman-owned agency, and they said that they do their best to try to get the assignments 2 or 3 days in advance. So that way they're not just calling you at the last minute, but it is a temp agency. So they said, be prepared because we may call you. And if we call you, it looks good if you are available. But they do understand if you're not available sometimes. So I said, okay, that's fine. I just need a job, you know. And so they said, okay. So because I was applying for a medical coding position and anything related to medical coding, they did give me a proficiency test. Now, they didn't tell me what my exact score was, but they did tell me that I passed it. So it was just a standard test. And their standard test for testing medical coders was a few coding questions on diagnosis coding and procedure coding, what the modifiers were, and medical terminology and anatomy were all on all these questions that they had. And I believe it was like 40 questions on this test, right? And so I had to take it while I was there. And so it was fine. They happened to have a set of books there too that I could use. So I used those, and they said, okay, well, as long as you pass, which I did, they will get me set up. And they said if something happens that they would try to find me a job anyway, whether it was with coding or not. So I said, okay. And so they said, well, we'll give you a call in a few days. Now, I had been hearing this from other people, from places that I had applied. And I said, okay, you know, whatever. At this point, I was so frustrated because it'd been 2 months since I had gotten my certification. I really wanted to stop working in bartending. I really wanted to stop working at the concession stand. And I was tired of working on my feet and working for the halfway house. I didn't want to do it anymore. And so I'm just like, please. I was like, please, God, just let me find something. Lo and behold, a week later, she called me up and she said, hey, we have an assignment. We want to know if you're interested, but I said, okay. She goes, it is a coding assignment. The thing is, it's a 3-month assignment, so it's for 90 days. And at the end of the 90 days, they're going to decide who they want to keep, because you're going to be competing against 2 other people. So it's going to be 3 of you all together. Y'all all brand new. And, you know, they're going to decide who they want to keep at the end, because they only have a budget for 1 coder full time after this project. So I said, okay. And they said it's going to be at the Cancer Therapy Research Center. So I said, that's fine. And they go, well, we're going to have to send you for a substance test. And substance, you guys, I think you can put 2 and 2 together what substance is. So I went to like LabCorp or something like that. And I went and had that done. They said, as long as you pass it, you know, you're fine. So I said, oh, okay. So I passed it, and they said, all right, your start date is this date, and this is your end date. And if they are going to keep you on, they're going to let us know, and then we're going to work the paperwork from there. So I said, okay, that's fine. So I worked at the Cancer Therapy Research Center for 3 months, and I worked with 2 other ladies, and it was business casual that we had to dress in every day. And so that was fine. And I had production standards and I had accuracy standards, and we worked from our books because we didn't have encoders. We didn't do any of that stuff. So all we did was basically have our books with us because we used our own books. And so it was a quick learn of oncology coding, which was really good, because if you're going to learn something in the beginning, and something so detailed, oncology is really the way to go. Oncology or the ER, one of the two, is really the way to go, because you see a little bit of everything. And in oncology, it wasn't just oncology, it was other conditions that the patients had as well. And so it was interesting, you know, to be able to go through those and see what a record looked like. And we were coding their backlog. So we were working from paper charts, but paper charts that were typed. So it was fine. They were just basically printed. And I don't know why they did it like that, but they did it like that. So we had a stack that we had to work through. And then we would get like progress reports sent to the temp agency, and they would let us know if the employers that we were doing good, and which we were. Everybody was just doing the best that they could. And I didn't get picked, and another lady did not get picked. And it wasn't because of technical ability, it was just the supervisor herself, and which was fine for me because I didn't really care for the lady anyway. But it was a good experience overall. And we got paid with the temp agency. We got paid, I believe it was every week on that assignment. And you'll find that in some places that the temp agencies will pay you based on how they're paid with the contract. So either they'll give you an option of getting paid weekly, or sometimes it is that you have to be paid every 2 weeks. So for this assignment, we got paid every week. So that was nice. It was nice to be able to have a check coming in every week. So that was good. And so I did that. And then of course, when that assignment ended, they said, okay, well, Bleu, we'll call you when we find something for you. And so I was like, okay, but now I was kind of panicking because I had been working. So now I had something on my resume, but I didn't have money coming in. And I was like, oh, what am I going to do? And I'm like, I really don't want to go back to the bar. I don't want to go back to the halfway house. I don't want to do any of that. I had had a taste of working in medical coding, and I wanted to stay with that. So it was about a week later, I get a call from the lady from the temp agency, and she says, hey, Bleu. And I'm like, hey. She said, I got good news, and I got some not so good news. And I'm thinking, oh, no. I said, give me the good news. And she's like, okay, we potentially have a long-term assignment for you that could be 5 years. So I was like, oh, okay. I'm like, okay, that's good. She says, yes, it's for a major hospital. I'm thinking, okay, this is really great. Like, what's the not so good news? And she goes, the not so good part that you may not find to be a good part, but it it could work out. And I'm like, okay, well, what is it? Spit it out. Because at this point, I'm sweating now. I'm like, my hands are sweating. I'm just like, what is she going to tell me? And my heart's racing. And she says, it's about 8 hours away. And she goes, we won't pay for your moving expenses, but it is going to pay you substantially more than what you're making now. And she wasn't lying. And so I was like, oh. And then she goes, I don't want an answer right now. She goes, I just want you to think about it. She goes, take some time. She goes, let it marinate. She was a real sweet lady. I loved her. And she said, just let it marinate. She goes, call me in the morning. Let me know. She goes, because if you want to jump on this opportunity, this is solid employment for the next 5 years. She goes, we just won this contract with this major hospital. They need coders. She goes, you're a really good coder, Bleu. You had a very good evaluation exiting your assignment. And she goes, and that's wonderful for a brand new medical coder. And she was not a coder herself, but she understood the struggle because she had met a lot of us coders that were struggling to get jobs. And she goes, so if you want to move, you have an absolute job, but we just can't pay for your moving expenses. And so I said, all right. So I hung up with her and I talked to my mom, and I was like, Mom, this place is 8 hours away. I said, I don't want to do this. She goes, no, you're going to go. And I said, no, I'm not going to go. And I said, I don't want to leave you. My mom was sick at the time, and I did not want to leave her. And she had her husband, but y'all can read my face. So I said, Mom, I don't want to go. And she's like, no, you need to go. She goes, because this is your chance to get a job. And she goes, they've already tried to find a job for you here, and it's not happening. She goes, so this is a really good opportunity. That money is really good compared to what you made. And so I said, and she goes, just move. She goes, we'll move you. And she goes, you can fly back and forth home. You can come and see me whenever you want to. And, we'll just do it that way. And I'm like, oh, God, I don't want to go. And I was like, and she's like, you got to go. This is your time. This way you can get your experience. She goes, you don't even have to be there 5 years. You can come back after a year, however long it takes you to get back here once you have your experience. And you have something on your resume. You have something to fall back on. So I said, okay. So I called her back the next day and I said, okay, I'll take it. She was like, you will? And she was so excited because she was like, oh my gosh, I'm so happy. She goes, because we have nobody right now. She goes, so at least we're sending somebody. So I say, okay, good. So I get up there and, my mom had moved me up there and I had drove and I had like a luggage and that was all I took. I didn't take anything. I had no furniture. I had nothing moving up there. And all I had was two things, a job and a guaranteed paycheck. So I was like, okay, well, got to start somewhere. So I got a little apartment and it was really nice, a really cute little apartment down the street from a really nice little restaurant. And for this job though, the thing that was different was I got paid every 2 weeks. So I wasn't getting that weekly check like I was used to. I had to go to the police station to go get a, like where they check for your warrants, if you have warrants out or anything like that. I had to get fingerprinted. I had to go through all of that process because that was a larger facility and there was higher security there. And so I was like, okay. And so I had to go do all of that. I had to change my driver's license and everything. So I was like, all right, I'll just go over there and do that. So I did that. And as I'm starting to work, and they had put me in, so the way it went is we had a liaison that worked at the hospital, and she was in charge of everybody that was employed under that temp agency. So it was weird because it wasn't just that temp agency, it was a couple of other agencies that had like CNAs and nurses and things like that. So this person, her name was Jeannie, she was our boss but she was the point of contact between the temp agency and the hospital itself. So she was employed with the hospital and they did everything through her. Jeannie was the one who approved our time cards and everything. So whenever we worked, we just had to fill out our time cards, send it to our supervisor, who was like our lead. Our lead sent it to the liaison, Jeannie, and Jeannie just was like, okay, and she approved it. And then we got paid. So that was how that worked. But the great thing was because this was a contract and they were paying not me individually. This hospital was not paying me individually because I was not employed under that hospital, but instead employed by the temp agency. The temp agency was like, okay, they were cutting the checks and, direct deposit. And so I would get my check every 2 weeks. Well, then a couple months into this assignment, we started being allowed to have overtime. And so it was basically like a blank check to work overtime because that's how far behind this hospital was. Again, they were calling in a temp agency for backup to come and help because they could not find qualified candidates there in the area. And they needed people now. And so that was where the temp agency came in. And then when I got there, rather, there was a ton of backlog to get through and a lot of work to be caught up on because there was a mass exodus of people. And in this particular hospital, people were just moving. I mean, it wasn't that it was a bad place to work. I loved that hospital because it was very employee friendly. It had, they had the best cafeteria. Now you will hear people complain about cafeterias at hospitals, not this cafeteria. This cafeteria was amazing, okay? And not only that, they had walking trails around the facility. It was just amazing. And so we did you basically didn't have to go anywhere. There was a gym, there was a library, there was everything in this hospital. So I really liked the hospital to begin with. And so we were working all of this overtime. We could work any hours on any days that we wanted to. So when I first got there, I worked Sunday through Thursday, and that was my work schedule. And then they shortened our schedules to Sunday to Wednesday. So we worked longer hours, but it was just, that was the way that it was there. There was a lot of flexibility. But as long as the temp agency said, as long as it's okay with them and that's what they want you to do, then everything is fine. So I said, okay. But I was there about 8 months and I had started applying for the job that I'm at now. And this meant leaving the safety net of having the guaranteed job. And I had gotten so used to the ladies, and I had gotten so used to working and getting all of this money and working all of these overtime hours. I mean, I worked insane overtime hours. It was nothing to put, I mean, tons and tons of hours in. It was nothing to do that. And so while I would have liked to stay, the point of being there was to get the experience so that I could move on. And that was what I was going for, was I needed to move on. So I started to apply for this hospital that I'm at, which was a permanent position. This was not through a temp agency, not any of those things. And I ended up getting it. So long story short, so I had to put in my resignation with not the hospital, but with the temp agency. The temp agency had to notify the hospital. They were the ones who did all of that. I did my exit interview with the hospital, and I also did an exit interview with the temp agency. And so they said, well, Bleu, we don't want you to go. You've been one of the best workers that we've had. You always get high praises with your evaluations, and, you know, we're really going to miss you. And I'm like, well, thank you for giving me a chance, because I would have never gotten all this experience. And I had gotten experience working in computer systems, like the electronic health record. And I had gotten encoder software experience, and I had gotten clinic experience, and I had gotten all of these things, and in a short amount of time. And that knowledge was what got me this position here, because I was a profi coder there, and I got hired on as a profi coder here. So that was how I was able to get in. And having that experience with the temp agency, had I said no, I mean, I would have struggled continuously to be able to get in somewhere. And just because I went through them and I was able to get them to help me to get a job, and they were so proactive with getting me work. I mean, it really wasn't long. It was literally 1 week after I got registered that I got the job with the Cancer Therapy Research Center. And then it was another week after I got finished with that assignment that I had another job. And I was literally, it was like, okay, Thursday, and then Monday morning I was reporting. So I was just like, oh, well, okay, you know. But that was the way that it was. And so I would 100% totally recommend going through a temp agency for any new medical coder. I am actually begging you guys to just even give it a try, because who better to advocate for you? Because the more money that I made, the more money the temp agency made. All those overtime hours that I was doing, they were getting their cut too. And so they liked that, and they wanted to make sure that I was happy. They sent me like little things for like, it wasn't administrative professionals, it was something else. But they sent me a thing in the mail, and I was like, wow, this was from the temp agency too. So they really took care of us, you know, all their people, you know. And so, and I had met a couple of other people that came on through them. And I mean, it was a really good experience. And like I said, I would recommend it for anybody, because when you are looking to get experience, when these employers call in a temp agency, they need a body to fill a seat, and they need somebody to come in and basically, you know, take care of what would be left to basically just sit if somebody wasn't there. So that's your golden opportunity to be able to take that time to learn, and to be able to take that time to get familiar with the industry. And it wasn't just, gosh, I'm brand new and I don't know what to do. It was, okay, we got to pull out this book and we got to start reading, because we got to figure this stuff out, you know. I was lucky at the Cancer Therapy Research Center. There was a guy named Brian who was very helpful, and he was always coming up to help us, me and the two other girls that were there, and answer our questions about coding. And then we would bounce questions off of each other, which was really great, because we were in this room and we were basically at tables, and we had our own table and it was like a folding table too at that. And we had our own folding tables, and we were just working. And then with my second job, you know, having a really good team lead like Jessica, that really did help, because Jessica was like, okay, do you want to try this profi coding? And I'm like, okay. And she's like, well, are you sure? And I'm like, yeah. And then she's like, no one likes it. No one wants to do it. Are you sure? I go, I don't know to be scared. Just tell me what to do and I'll figure it out. And she's like, okay, here we go. So I started working. The one thing I did not like was OBGYN. I was like, "Argh." Everything else was okay. But this was ICD-9 times too, I will say that. So I did not like OBGYN. But now it's not so bad. It's not so bad. But that was my story for working at the temp agency. And like I said, if I ever had to go somewhere again and start all over again, I would do that. And this was before my time in working in medical coding. I worked for another temp agency when I lived in Hawaii. I lived in Hawaii for a time, and I needed a job, and it was really hard to find a job at the time, and I was applying everywhere, and just like I couldn't get in anywhere. And I was like, man, this is really hard, you know? And so I applied with a temp agency there, and they were like, oh yeah, we have an assignment for you. And it was about a week, and they were very proactive with trying to find me work. And they were like, okay, well, since you've done office work and secretarial work, you know, we have a position for you at a warehouse. So I was like, oh, okay. And I'm like, okay, well, I'll just work at a warehouse, you know? I'm like, this is weird. So I would print out like shipping labels, and I would like record stuff that was coming in from the shipping yards and things like that. It was a really interesting experience. And then there was people that would come in with like lots of money to pay for their shipments, and I would have to like call somebody because I was with the temp agency, and they were like, okay, we don't want you to have to worry about handling this stuff, so just let us know and we'll get somebody else that will come in and handle the cash. So I'm like, okay, because this was like, you know, not just like $100. This was like $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 are coming in within their hands. I'm like, okay, yeah, y'all can take care of that. So, but I've always had really good experiences working for temp agencies. I've always been available whenever I've registered with them. And sometimes you're waiting by the phone, and sometimes you got to be proactive and call in and say, hey, do you guys have anything? And so they'll tell you what they have, and sometimes it's related to what you want to do, and then other times it's like it's completely different, you know. I had moved again, and I think I had moved back home, but this was after I had left Hawaii, and I was working for a temp agency as well again. And you would think I would have been back right after finishing school. Didn't connect the two. So I went and I registered with the temp agency, and they sent me on this assignment that I was helping this guy who was doing like scavenger hunt stuff. So you get little adventures when you get put on some of these assignments if you're not doing medical coding yet. But yeah, absolutely. I would definitely recommend going to a temp agency, getting registered, and making those connections, because getting connected with them is like a network of people. They know lots of people, and if they have really good workers, the employers are going to know, hey, this temp agency has got really good people. Let's call them. So it's always important to put your best foot forward. At least that's just what I say anyway. Hi Rochelle, thank you for all the blue hearts. Tangela, the older I get, the faster time flies by. Truer words were never spoken. Hi Miss T. Hi Floor, I'm doing great, thank you. Thank you for the blue heart, and hello the beautiful goddess. But yes, that is my story time for today about working with a temp agency. But yes, it was nice because it was, I mean, you had a job, but you weren't held down to it. If you didn't like it, you could always tell them that you didn't like it and start something else. And that's always a really good option to have. I didn't have to do that, thank goodness. But it's something that if, because not all personalities gel either. So that is something that you have to think about sometimes. And for some people, that's, you know, they need to have that option to be able to go and work at a place, meet the people, and then if they like it, then they continue. And if not, no hard feelings, they got somebody else to come in. So does anybody have any questions? This was a fast episode. Okay, Miss T, what's on your mind? I'm listening. Okay. You're trying to connect with other coders to do what? Okay, you're not a coder. Okay, so um, you want to get into the field. Okay, have you gone through? Okay, so what is your question exactly? That you want to get into the field? Have you gone to school? Have you gotten your certification? You said you're not a coder yet, right? You've taken a billing class, okay. Have you tried to register with Temp and tell them you want to do billing? Because they have positions for those too. Um, okay. So have you've registered already? And you haven't heard anything, or? Okay, too much to say. Okay, I'm just trying to help you. Forget it. All right. I'm just trying to help you out. Um, you said you had a question, so I was like, okay. I'm just waiting for your question. So, what do we got? Tangela. Is that Tangela? It's really small on my phone, and then I'm trying to look here at the same. Tangela, hey Blue, turns out my supervisor wasn't holding me back. She actually wrote a letter to get the A removed from my CPCA. I overreacted. Yikes. Well, you know, sometimes it's kind of hard. Sometimes it's kind of hard to know. I mean, you reacted the way you did for a reason. It wasn't because you just all of a sudden assumed that you weren't getting support. There's a reason, you know. And I would listen to my own reactions before I would say something else. You know what I'm saying? Like, I've heard of people that they will be nice after they find out that what they're doing is wrong, right? And so that's it. Just and then they try to make the other person feel like, oh no, you were doing it wrong, or you were misinterpreting what I was saying. So like kind of like gaslighting you. So yeah, no. Always pay attention to your feelings. And if you feel like you overreacted, you know, you had a reason for reacting the way that you did. Obviously, as long as you were professional, you should be fine. And it's a nerve-wracking time, you know, but also, you know, they should be clear too that they're just trying to help you, you know, and that's the thing. And if that's what she was going to do, then she should have said too, hey, you know, by the way, I'm going to write you a letter for recommendation to remove the A because you've met all the requirements and you've done everything you're supposed to do. So, and they know to do that. And anytime I've heard of anybody getting theirs removed, you know, the supervisor told them anyway. So, yeah, I wouldn't worry about it. Hi, Mitney. Thank you for joining me. So, yes. All right. Does anybody else have anything? What is today? Today is Wednesday, isn't it? Yeah. Gosh, it's already. Oof. The first. All right, since we got crickets, I'll go ahead and close it up. If you haven't had a chance to subscribe already, I hope that you do. Thank you so much for watching. Please give this a thumbs up, and I will see y'all next time. Bye.